Hey everyone, welcome back to Note to Shelf. Today I thought it would be fun to share some of the books that I want to reread in the future. I don't reread a lot of books. It usually has to have been a while since I last read it, because then by then I would have forgotten about it. But it would also probably be a book that I think about a lot, and these books that I'm sharing with you today are books that I've been thinking about. So we'll get right to it. First up, we have the Rejected Writers Book Club by Suzanne Kellman. Let me read you the blurb from the back. A writers group turns the page to a wacky adventure. Librarian Janet Johnson is puzzled when she is invited and practically dragged to her first meeting of the Rejected Writers Book Club. This quirky group of women would much rather celebrate one another's rejected manuscripts over cups of tea and slices of lemon cake than actually publish a book. But good friends are exactly what Janet needs after moving to the small town of South Lee Bay, Washington. Just as the ladies are about to raise a teacup to their 500th rejection letter, they receive bad news that could destroy one member's reputation and disband the group forever. To save the club, Janet joins her fellow writers on a wild road trip to San Francisco in search of the local publisher who holds the key to a long-buried secret. As they race to the finish line, they'll face their fears: landslides, haunted houses, handsome strangers, ungrateful children, and have the time of their lives. Now, this book is one that I got at a thrift store when I was in, I believe, middle school. So I don't remember most of the details, but I do remember being surprised that although these characters were much older than I was, they were, I believe, in their 40s. And so I felt like I couldn't necessarily relate to them being so much older than me, but it was still a really fun book, and I liked it a lot. And I remember being surprised by that, me and my little naive mind. But that alone makes me want to reread it, and I haven't read it since then. I'm curious to see, now that I'm older, how I relate to these characters now. So that was the Rejected Writers Book Club. So next up is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This, I'm pretty sure, is the prequel to her other Shadowhunter book series. And this one follows an American girl who goes to Victorian London. So it is a bit like a historical fiction, well, setting wise anyway. And I do like that a lot in the stories that I read. But I read this, I think it was 2 years ago, and I liked it enough to buy the rest of the trilogy, but I haven't gotten through the rest of the trilogy. So I wanted to go back and reread the first book so that I can continue the series. And there's actually a couple other books like this where it's the first in a series and I want to continue the series. But for those books, the next book doesn't come out until later this year, so I am eagerly anticipating those. But yeah, I hope to continue the series one day, and by the time I do that, I'll probably have to reread the book. So now we have a book that I read a few years ago. It's called How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino. Let me read the blurb for this one. The Japanese classic that has delighted millions of readers in English for the first time. Following the death of his father, Copper, 15, faces enormous changes, and he wonders about things he used to take for granted, including his place in the world, friendship and loyalty, and the role of luck and choice in his future. Meanwhile, Copper's uncle writes to him in a journal, sharing knowledge and offering his advice on life's big questions as Copper begins to consider what matters most. And this book also mentions how it's a favorite book by Hayao Miyazaki, the one who created a lot of the Studio Ghibli classics. And that was a big reason why I picked up this book. I actually got it from the library, and I liked it enough that I wanted to buy my own copy because I think it's a great coming of age story full of life lessons that I wanted to remember, and the best way to do that is to have your own copy. Editing Ashlyn here, just wanted to clarify that you don't have to buy your own copy if you don't want to. That's just what I prefer. You could write down anything you want to remember in a notebook. Just wanted to clarify that. And I was also thinking, I have a younger sister, and I thought if she ever wanted to read this book, now I have it and she can get those same life lessons as well. So I definitely think it's something good to check out, and I think definitely worth a reread, hopefully. Next up is another book that I originally got at the library, and then bought my own copy of. It's We Do Not Part by Han Kang. I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of it, with it being a Nobel Prize winner, but I'll go ahead and read the blurb. One winter morning, Kyung-ha receives an urgent message from her friend In-sun to visit her at a hospital in Seoul. In-sun has injured herself in an accident, and she begs Kyung-ha to return to Jeju Island, where she lives, to save her beloved pet, a white bird called Ama. A snowstorm hits the island when Kyung-ha arrives. She must reach In-sun's house at all costs, but the icy wind and squalls slow her down as night begins to fall. She wonders if she will arrive in time to save the animal, or even survive the terrible cold that envelops her with every step. Lost in a world of snow, she doesn't yet suspect the vertiginous plunge into the darkness that awaits her at her friend's house. Blurring the boundaries between dream and reality, We Do Not Part powerfully illuminates a forgotten chapter in Korean history, buried for decades, bringing to light the lost voices of the past to save them from oblivion. Both a hymn to an enduring friendship and an argument for remembering, it is the story of profound love in the face of unspeakable violence, and a celebration of life, however fragile it might be. Okay, sorry, I had to check that the mic was still on. Like the blurb mentions, this book does tell of the history of the Jeju uprising and the massacre that happened right before the Korean War. So it is very heavy with the history, which, if you don't like history, might turn you off from it. But I found that the history is told from the perspective of one of the characters' parents. It's their personal story. So I found that helped to make it read less like a textbook and more of a story. So I personally found it really interesting. Also, the whole time I was wondering if the main character was dreaming up everything or not. So that was really interesting. And that's never explicitly answered in the book. So it's definitely one of those books that make you think. And, it really makes me want to like pick it apart and like annotate it, analyze it, and all that. So that's why I wanted to buy my own copy, and I do hope to reread it. So speaking of books that I want to pick apart, the last book I have here is No Longer Human by Dazai Osamu. This is the story of Yozo Oba, who finds it impossible to form meaningful relationships with family or friends. As a child, he copes by acting the fool, mocking himself while entertaining others. As an adult, he turns to alcohol, sex, and drugs. Written in 1948 and based closely on Dazai's own life, the timeless and universal themes of social alienation, failure, and one man's inner torture at his inability to feel like a normal human has made this one of the most widely read novels in Japan. So, obviously, I read this book a while ago, and so I really want to see what things that I pick up on a second read through. And also, this is a different translation, and I think a newer translation than the one that I read before. So I'm really curious to see how the two translations compare and contrast, if they do at all. I think The one I read before was translated by Donald Keene, and this one is by Juliet Winters Carpenter. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how that differs. So, that's all the books that I had right now, and these have been the books that have been on my mind recently as books that I want to go back to. Like I said, there's probably more out there, but this is just, these were there. I do hope that you got some good recommendations from this list. Also, let me know in the comments if you ever reread your books. Have you read any of the books that I showed you today? How did you like them? Please let me know. Have a wonderful day and thank you for watching.